Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel, RV Tips from Jan. Today's topic, which is better for two-way communications when camping, hiking, and off-roading? This is a very relevant subject for us to be discussing in light of the recent Federal Communication Commission changes that impact the type of equipment that will become available, as well as how we operate that equipment in the near future. Now, we're all familiar with the unit on the far left of this slide, Citizens Band or CB radios. These are very popular for truckers as well as RVers to keep in touch with traffic conditions as we're traveling over the roadways. The radio in the center, though, may be a little less well known. It is the General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS. It has some significant advantages that we'll talk about over Citizens Band and is becoming an increasingly mode of operation for campers and RVers. Lastly, on the far right is the Family Radio Service, FRS. This particular radio service was born out of an effort by Radio Shack when Radio Shack was an electronic powerhouse in the 1990s. They recognized that Citizens Band radio had become very cluttered, and they approached the FCC about carving out a section of channels from the then existing General Mobile Radio Service spectrum to allocate those to a new service called Family Radio Service, FRS, with the stipulation that the power would be limited significantly from what's available with GMRS. And the FCC approved that. And you're familiar that these radios are currently sold in the marketplace today. So the answer in terms of which means of communication will be best in the future, taking into account the new FCC rules, may surprise you, because if you agree with the conclusions that we are going to draw in this video, you will see that the mode of preferred operation is going to require us all to get an FCC license in the future. And this is because the new rules that have been put into place by the FCC will impact the manufacturers, the specifications, as well as the mode of operations of these various forms of communication. And that's what I want to share with you today in this video. Now here's further examples of the three types of communication. The Citizens Band radio, it's limited by its 4 watts of power. The GMRS has the advantage of being allowed to operate with 50 watts of maximum power. The Family Service radio, however, is really limited because those radios are designed to operate between 1/2 and 2 watts of transmitting power. So as we take a deep dive into the characteristics of these 3 modes of operation, here's what we will learn. Citizens Band is AM radio, amplitude modulated radio. And one of its drawbacks is the fact that it has relatively poor audio quality. And the way that we can sort of relate to this is the AM radios in our car have a similar type of characteristic. If we tune off of a strong station, we hear a lot of static and noise over the airwaves. This is typical of AM radio type of transmissions. Another limiting factor with CB radios is the maximum output of 4 watts. But with base units and more sophisticated antennas, you can get up to 50 miles of base unit to base unit communication with Citizens Band radio. However, handhelds are fairly bulky and are limited to about 3 miles maximum handheld to handheld communication. And because it's AM radio, it does have a significant amount of static and noise. On the upside, however, no license is required. On the downside, it is considered old technology. It's been around more than 60 years. The family radio service, born out of the effort of Radio Shack in the 1990s with the FCC, is an FM radio, and we're all familiar with our FM radios in our car and the high fidelity type of audio that they provide. That is true with the family radio service, two-way transmission. Very clear voice, virtually no static. These are relatively inexpensive, very popular with kids, frequently sold in the toy department, and power limits of 2 watts means that they have relatively short point-to-point communication capabilities, typically about a quarter of a mile using handheld to handheld. Now, I will add that often the packaging will say something significantly more than that, but that's in an absolutely perfect environment where there's no kinds of obstacles between the two transmitting and receiving stations. These radios are very competitive in pricing, but also typically not very well built and not very durable. On the positive side, they do not require a license. The General Mobile radio service, GMRS, has a number of distinct advantages that are making it increasingly more popular with RVers, off-roaders, bikers, hikers. This is a form of communication where the radios are relatively small and where the communication capabilities are relatively significantly better than either Citizens Band or family radio service. These are FM radios with excellent voice quality, virtually no static. The prices keep coming down because of the increased competition. Manufacturing quality is generally considered to be quite good. The maximum output power at 50 watts means that you have some significant, if you will, horsepower behind your transmitting station. Typically, mobile to handheld unit is about 5 miles, capable in hilly and wooded areas. This is why it's so popular with off-roaders. Handheld to handheld are 1 to 5 watts, often with a low power, a medium power, and a high power capability. And those typically have a range of about 3 miles. And it goes without saying that GMRS radios are becoming the radio of choice for off-roading, hiking, and yes, will be our radio of choice for RVing, not on the road, but when we get to the campsite and we want to stay in touch with family members and friends who are off hiking, biking, at the camp store, or at the seashore. The downside of this particular mode of operation is that the FCC requires licensing. That is good for 10 years, has a cost of $70, does not have any kind of an examination or testing, but you do have to go online, fill out an application, and get the appropriate license, and you will get a call sign from the FCC that's unique to your particular station. And finally, you must be 18 to apply for this license. Now, the marketplace has had a lot of radios that are both FRS and GMRS capable. And this has created a tremendous amount of confusion for the consumer concerning, does my radio have licensing requirements? Does it not? Does it not? And also in terms of the power capabilities of the various channels. The FCC has really addressed this with the new rule changes. there will no longer likely be radios that are both FRS and GMRS capable. They will be one or the other. In the past, these radios have stated somewhere either on the packaging or in their manual that an FCC license is required to operate on the GMRS frequencies. But people just haven't applied for that license, and as a result, this has been a completely unenforceable requirement. People who typically own these radios simply do not have the required FCC license. So the FCC has really addressed this, and they're trying to put some teeth into this, at the same time clear up all the ambiguity that exists between the two types of communication tools. The revised rules are specifically designed to clear up the confusion that currently exists concerning the transmitting power limitations, the frequency or channel allocation, and licensing requirements for GMRS and GMRS/FRS capable radios. FRS radios in the future will have 22 channels from channel 1 through 22. They'll have a maximum output for transmitting power of 2 watts, and they will not require an FCC license. However, under the new rules, channels 8 through 14 will be limited to a maximum power of 1/2 watt output. And this is simply because those channels in the past were designated as GMRS frequencies. And there'll be radios out there in the marketplace that still operate those as GMRS radios. And the FCC doesn't want your FRS radio to be non-compliant. So there's that 1/2 watt limitation on channels 8 through 14. Future GMRS radios, these are radios that are going to be built in the future and available probably in the next 12 to 24 months here in the US. These radios are radios that will have more than 2 watts transmitting capability. And if they do, they automatically will be designated as GMRS radios. They will require an FCC license at a cost of $70, and that license is good for 10 years. And as I mentioned earlier, no examination or test is required for the license. However, like their FRS counterparts, GMRS radios will have a 1/2 watt transmitting power limitation on channels 8 through 14. This means that if you have a GMRS radio in the future that meets these particular FCC rules and regulations, if you are transmitting on channels 8 through 14, you will be able to transmit a significantly shorter distance of communication versus the other channels. And this is something we'll need to keep in mind. So what's going to happen with all the GMRS, FRS dual radios that are in the market today? Well, over time, those are likely going to completely disappear because now the FCC has clearly defined and made distinctions between the two radios. The new rules clearly define the capability, the transmitting power limitations, and the frequency allocations for both FRS and GMRS radios. So a question that we all are going to have is, will I be able to keep and use my current FRS radio and my current GMRS radio, or will I need to purchase new radios that comply with the new FCC rules? Well, the good news is the FCC has recognized that there's a lot of radios out there that are not going to necessarily meet these new rules, so they have grandfathered those radios. they are covered by the old FCC rules. The new FCC rules will apply to future radio production. And as I mentioned, that's expected to start showing up in the U.S. market probably over the next 12 to 24 months. In the meantime, look for the fire sales as retailers and manufacturers are closing out the old style radios. You'll still be able to use those. They're quite acceptable, but there's going to be some great sale prices on those old radios as they're trying to make room for the new radios and new technology. So, well then, have we addressed this question, which is better, CB or GMRS? And we've sort of set aside the FRS because that's limited to 2 watts maximum. They're not as well built and very, very short range for handheld to handheld communication. It is fine if you're going to go around the block, or if you're in a neighbor's backyard, or you're headed to the playground and it's about a quarter of a mile or less away. If you're going hiking in a wooded area, if you're in a hilly terrain, if you're going to be more than a quarter of a mile away from the person that you'd like to communicate with, those radios won't be very effective. You're either going to have to go with the CB or Citizens Band radio or with the GMRS radio. So the CB radio, the big advantage of it is the standard, the gold standard for two-way communications over the road. The trucking industry has really established that. And we don't see the trucking industry moving to any other two-way communication in the near future. However, for the campsite and for RVers at the campsite, the preferred mode of operation is definitely going to be with GMRS two-way radios. With their 50-watt maximum capabilities, you can have a unit in your RV with a roof antenna that will give you more than 5-mile coverage with walkie-talkies that are out and about with family members and friends. This is a huge advantage because many of the campsites where we enjoy RVing do not have very good cellular service. Additionally, when you get deep in the woods, sometimes you have no cellular service at all. So this form of two-way communication with a base station back at the campsite can be a huge advantage both in terms of safety as well as maintaining just two-way communications with family members and friends. And if you have kids or grandkids, this is a great way to have assurance and reassurance that if something happens when they're out and about, they'll have an easy way to get back in touch with you without worrying about the lack of a good signal from campsite to the remote handheld unit. And as I close out this presentation, and thank you for taking the time to watch it, I hope that it's been fairly clear to you because there's a lot of things that we've talked about here with these rule changes. I wanted to share this particular radio with you because it's my favorite. It can be used as a portable as well as a base. It has 22 channels. It is a GMRS radio. It has 5 power options. It has a variety of battery operated capabilities, including AA rechargeable batteries. It has a dynamo crank, AC adapter, or DC adapter. It has a USB connection, which allows you to recharge your cell phone right off of the radio. It has what's called EVOX, which is voice operated transmission. That is, you don't have to push a button to engage your transmitter. It can be engaged through your voice. Flashlight, alarm clock, AM radio, NOAA weather radio alert, channel scan, and it's the most powerful portable GMRS radio allowed by law. both under the current as well as the future FCC regulations. So if you're looking for a radio to have at your base camp in your RV, this would be my radio of choice. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have found this helpful. If you have, please click that subscription button. But more importantly, please continue to be safe and stay well. Thank you.